Good morning. There is no longer any doubt that Joe Biden is unfit to be our commander-in-chief. The Biden White House, far-left House Democrats, and the mainstream media are in complete disarray because they know this to be true and have been caught participating in one of the greatest media cover-ups in American history. For the last 3.5 years, House Republicans and the American people have been demanding details about Joe Biden's mental and physical decline. But every time we raise these legitimate concerns, far-left Democrats and their loyal stenographers in the mainstream media rushed to Biden's defense, claiming that the clearly diminished Joe Biden was as sharp as ever and accusing us of peddling conspiracy theories. The cover-up is over and accountability is here. For years, House Republicans have known that Joe Biden is unfit for office. We also know that he will go to any lengths to maintain his grip on power. This is why it is so crucial that we take every possible measure to ensure that the 2024 presidential election is free from election interference and is constitutional. As part of that ongoing effort, House Republicans are bringing to the floor this week Congressman Chip Roy's Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, which requires individuals to provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Not surprisingly, the Biden White House, whose far-left open border agenda has let in millions, over 10 million illegal immigrants, is against our bill. This is a very simple and logical concept rooted in the Constitution. Only American citizens should vote in American elections. Also this week, House Republicans are moving Mary Miller's CRA to stop Joe Biden's radical efforts to roll back women's rights and change Title IX to allow biological men to access women and girls' bathrooms, locker rooms, and sports. Next week, we are looking forward to uniting in Milwaukee behind President Donald J. Trump's America First agenda, which created the greatest economy in generations, the securest border in modern history, the lowest gas prices in years, and peace through strength around the world. With that, we're honored to be joined by Chip Roy, who is leading the SAVE Act this week on the floor. Chip.
Well, I want to thank Chairwoman Stefanik. I want to thank the entire Republican leadership team, particularly the Speaker. Republicans are united. We are united behind a simple notion that I think at least 81% of Americans, maybe as high as 87%, depending on which poll you look at, believe in a simple concept, that only American citizens should vote in American elections, as Elise just said. Not surprisingly, our Democrat colleagues, in particular the President, yesterday in his statement of administration policy, take a different view. They don't believe that we should require only citizens vote. Our legislation is very simple. It's already unlawful, as our Democratic colleagues like to point out, for non-citizens to vote. But unfortunately, we don't have a mechanism for ensuring that that is the case because the courts have interpreted the law to prevent that. So our legislation simply fixes that. Our legislation provides for ample avenues for American citizens to be able to vote. In no way will Americans' right to vote be hampered, but instead we will ensure the integrity of our elections by requiring that we have documentary proof of citizenship to vote. Like, this is simple. You either want to preserve and protect what it means to be a citizen in the United States and preserve and protect this great country and do what the vast majority of Americans want to do, and that's what Republicans want to do, or you go down the path that our Democrat colleagues want to go down, which is to try to continue to prop up open borders and the efforts to, frankly, undermine the integrity of the elections by allowing people to vote who have no business voting and making the decisions for our country. I'm really proud of the work that Republicans have done on this. This is very simple, and I think the American people will see it for exactly what it is. Republicans who want to stand on the side of the average, hardworking American family who simply wants their country back. That's what this legislation does, and we'll see what happens on the floor of the House. I hope all Republicans will support it. I expect they will, and we'll see what Democrats do in the face of a president who clearly is standing against the will of the American people, that only citizens should vote.
Thanks, Chip. It's a big week for House Democrats. They have to figure out what they're going to do about Joe Biden, who recently proved to the world what Republicans have been saying now for years. He's not fit to be president. And they have to twist themselves into a pretzel to explain why they're advocating for letting illegal immigrants vote in our elections. Let us be clear. Only American citizens should have a say in American elections. It's sad that today's Democrat Party has gone so far that this needs to be clarified. No amount of spin changes the fact that Congressman Chip Roy's SAVE Act, which I'm proud to co-sponsor, is simple. It protects American citizens' right to vote by requiring proof of citizenship for voter registration and the removal of non-citizens from voter rolls. Safeguarding our elections should not be a partisan issue. But the Democrats are hell-bent on making it one because it's part of their grand design. First, Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed over 10 million illegal immigrants to invade our country. Now they're opposing efforts to prevent these illegals from voting in federal elections. Don't just take my word for it. Democrats' House leadership has launched a united effort against the SAVE Act. And the Biden administration came out with a statement against this common sense bill as well. If illegal immigrants are not voting in our elections as Democrats contend, then why are they working so hard against this bill? It's no secret what their motives are. And it should be alarming to every American, regardless of their politics. And by the way, there is evidence out there that shows non-citizens have been on voter rolls and voted in U.S. elections. While Democrats work for illegal immigrants, House Republicans are going to continue to work for the American people. Our message, again, is simple. American elections are for Americans only. And with that, I turn it over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. It's interesting to watch the Democrats right now expressing disdain over Joe Biden's performance at the debate. Let's be clear, first of all, the reason so many people are recognizing that Joe Biden did so poorly is because President Trump did so well in the debate. President Trump actually articulated how we can get this country back on track, how we can get back to a place where under President Trump we had a secure border that we no longer have. We had low interest rates where people, a first-time home buyer, could actually afford to go buy their first home, which we don't have today. You could go to the grocery store and actually buy all the things you needed for your family and still have a little money left over to fill up your car because gasoline was less than $2 a gallon. President Trump knows we can get back to those days, and that's what President Trump talked about. And then the President Biden that so many people saw, frankly, is the same Joe Biden that we've been seeing for the last 3.5 years. The White House has been trying to cover up for a lot of his failures. But everybody up here in this town that's interacted with the president has known for years that this is the Joe Biden that we've all seen. And then the whole American public got to see it on display at the debate. In fact, if you go down the hall right now, the Democrats are literally behind closed doors talking about jettisoning, throwing out the votes of 14 million Democrat primary voters who chose Joe Biden to be their nominee. Think about that. The party that loves lecturing people about democracy is in a smoke-filled room trying to throw out the democratically chosen nominee for president by the Democrat voters. 14 million of them said they want Joe Biden to be their nominee, and Democrats are openly talking about discarding all of those votes and picking somebody else behind closed doors. No wonder when you look at all the Democrats that are abandoning Joe Biden, that he opposes a bill that says illegals can't vote. I guess he's looking for additional votes since he doesn't have his own party's votes anymore. But passing the SAVE Act is important to ensure the integrity of the vote, because every American citizen ought to know that when they vote, their vote is not going to be nullified by someone here illegally voting when they're not supposed to. Why not have a safeguard to ensure that only American citizens vote in America's elections? And so that's what this important bill is going to do that Chip Roy is bringing forward. A lot of work went into this by a lot of people to make sure that this bill achieves that purpose, that we protect the integrity of the vote well in advance of the election that's coming up in November. And I think you're going to see active participation by millions of Americans, maybe record numbers of Americans who are going to be voting in this election because so much is on the line. So much for hardworking families who are struggling under this failed Biden agenda, who cannot afford another 4 years of Joe Biden's America. They know that President Trump can deliver a better America because he's already done it, and he's ready to do it again. And we're going to also, by the way, protect the integrity of women's sports. We're bringing Mary Miller's CRA that reverses a Biden-era regulation that eviscerates Title IX. President Biden wants to get rid of women's sports, getting rid of women's locker rooms. And so we're going to have an opportunity for everybody to go on record and say, do they protect and stand up for women's sports? We're bringing that bill this week as well as some other bills too. So we're going to continue doing our work here in the House while Democrats are in disarray trying to figure out how to undermine their own democratically elected nominee for president. We are united behind Donald Trump. We're proud to be going to Milwaukee next week to help not only formally nominate, but set the stage to elect Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States. And now our speaker, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you all for being here on what is, I believe, the smallest crowd ever assembled for a Republican press conference. I don't know where everybody is this morning. Oh, they're chasing down the Democrats for a change. This is a really interesting phenomenon. And the reason it's so noteworthy and the reason that most of the Hill press are following the Democrats around now, we had almost no one outside our conference meeting this morning. Normally, you're all there gathered in the hallways. They're busy because they're chasing down our Democrat colleagues and asking them about Joe Biden's mental acuity and their efforts to cover it up. And that's what it's been. I mean, we could give you example after example after example. It's all on tape. It's all on record. Everybody knows it. Democrats, our colleagues, for 3.5 years have been covering up this glaring problem. The staff in the White House have been covering it up, and so have the Democrats in Congress. Just last month, I brought a couple of examples. Representative Dan Goldman said Biden was sharper than anyone he'd spoken to and that he has, quote, a photographic memory, unquote. Representative Eric Swalwell said that Biden put many of us to shame with his energy. I mean, there are example after example after example, leading Democrats and noteworthy Democrats on the Hill who have not been in the dark about this. They've been saying things I think most of them understand is simply not true, and they've misled the American people. And this is dangerous. We have the NATO Summit going on, the 75th anniversary of NATO here, all of our guests from around the world. What we're projecting from the White House is not strength right now, at a very dangerous time around the world. And that's why the American people are so alarmed by this. That's why the polls say that most of the Americans, people understand that Joe Biden is not fit for that office. And it's a terrible thing. The Democrats have misled us, and they need to be held accountable for that. They've also been misleading everybody about the SAVE Act, which will be on the floor that you've heard about this morning. It's a very important piece of legislation. They're claiming to oppose the bill because they say it's going to make it harder to vote, but they know that that is not true. Many of the Democrats want all of these illegals to participate in our federal elections. They want them to vote. There's no other conclusion that you can draw. When the White House announced they would veto the bill, they effectively handed our elections over to all of these illegal aliens that have come here. And the number is far greater than what is being reported. We were in conference this morning. One of our colleagues from the state of Kentucky was down at the Texas border over the last week. And he was there with top border officials. It was down south of Laredo. And he said that he and the colleagues that were there personally witnessed 9 illegals cross the border and disappear into the woods. And 2 Border Patrol agents tried to follow them on foot, and they lost them. And they came back, and our colleagues then asked, well, how will you account for those numbers, to send to DHS so they can add them to the number? And they said, we can't count them. What do you mean? Well, the Secretary and DHS does not allow us to count anyone unless we can say conclusively that they didn't cross back over the border and go back. And we lost them in the woods, so we don't know. So they don't even count in the got-away numbers. This is how it's being done. Whatever number you think, whatever number is being reported is grossly underreported. I've been saying for some time I think it's probably close to 16 million. That may be an underestimate. And it's a serious problem. And we cannot allow a federal election to be jeopardized by people who can run into the local welfare office, sign up for taxpayer benefits, and check a box that says, I'm a citizen and I want to vote. This is common sense legislation. Chip Roy has done an extraordinary job. Others have preparing this, getting it ready. We have to make sure that we don't have an election that is flawed in this way. In states that are trying to catch these criminals, they're identifying thousands of illegal aliens who are indeed registering and trying to vote. Some states have already done their own audits. This will make sure that we can prevent this from happening, and so we've got to do this. You should ask every Democrat if they're voting against this legislation, how in the world they can justify it. On the Title IX CRA, we'll be voting on that. It's very important. You've heard it articulated several times this morning. I won't reiterate it, but I'll say 2 weeks ago, we had an event here on the Hill celebrating the 52nd anniversary of Title IX. And we had Chairwoman Virginia Fox and Congresswoman Mary Miller, who has brought the CRA. We had Heather Higgins at the Independent Women's Forum. We had former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, and we had Riley Gaines there, some strong voices who advocate for safety and the protection of women in college athletics and in every other way. And it's interesting that the Democrats are on the wrong side of this. Also, a couple of weeks ago, just a few days before that event, Judge Terry Doty from the Western District of Louisiana, a federal judge, issued an injunction against the Biden administration rule that eviscerates Title IX and jeopardizes the safety of women. Here's what he said about it. Quote, in the injunction, this case demonstrates the abuse of power by executive federal agencies in the rulemaking process, and this abuse of power is a threat to democracy. We completely agree with that. Unlike Democrats, Republicans know what a woman is, and we know that women are worth protecting. We are trying to advance that cause. The Republican Party is pro-women, and the Democrats have to answer for that as well. More than two-thirds of Americans think that only women should be allowed to compete in women's sports, and this used to be common sense, and everyone agreed until the Biden administration, and they tried to upend that. I'm very grateful that we're going to be able to get this passed through the House. We'll send it to the Senate, and we will dare Chuck Schumer and the Democrats over there not to take up and pass the SAVE Act and not to take up the CRA on Title IX. With that, we'll take a few questions. Chad.
Good morning. Thank you. Clarify for us where we are on inherent contempt. I know Anna Paulina Luna had indicated that there was another resolution that she was going to bring forward. Is that going to, in fact, happen tomorrow? And do you support it? We've heard different things. I know what you had indicated before the recess, when things were all on the table, you were looking at everything. She has indicated at least twice that you are for whatever this resolution is that she's going to bring forth and how that would work.
I'm for being as aggressive as possible with holding Merrick Garland accountable. It is a very important institutional concern that we have, that a subpoena by the House must be complied with by the executive branch or anyone that a House issues a subpoena to. As you know, Merrick Garland refuses to turn over the audio tapes of the interview, the questioning that Special Counsel Robert Hur had with Joe Biden. We have the transcript, but we have a responsibility to ensure that the audio matches the transcript. Now, everybody in America knows. We all know why they don't want to turn over the audio, because it will obviously, presumably, show exactly what we all saw on that debate stage a couple of weeks ago, or Thursday last, and that's something that they've been wanting to cover up. So they're going to great lengths to exert executive privilege, which has no... Here's a question everybody needs to ask. How can the executive branch, how can the Attorney General, who works under the executive branch, exert executive privilege over something that is not in his purview? This is the special counsel outside of that. By definition, it's supposed to be a separate and independent decision maker. They don't get to exert executive privilege over something that is not theirs. So the whole thing, I think, will easily be defeated in court, and that's why we brought a lawsuit in federal court last Monday to enforce our subpoena. So we're being as aggressive as possible. I've talked with Anna Paulina Luna and other colleagues about her inherent contempt motion, and she may well bring it. If it's
support what she's going to bring forward?
Look,
you say you're going to be as aggressive.
If it's brought to the floor, I'll vote for it. But as a constitutional law litigator, a former constitutional law litigator, my preference is to follow the legal process and legal proceedings that protect the institution. I'm frankly have a little pause about presenting an Article I authority question to the Article III branch, to the federal judiciary, to ask the judicial branch whether they believe we have the right to enforce a subpoena in this unconventional way. I'd rather do it in the way that we've done in our present litigation, but we'll let the chips fall where they may. Every member has a right to bring a privilege motion like that, and Anna's very committed to the principle, and I am too. We all are. I think every Republican is. And so we'll see what happens with that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So since Congressman Roy is right there, do you plan on moving his 25th Amendment resolution forward at any point?
So I was asked, I think maybe the next day after the debate, if I were in the Biden cabinet, That was how the question was presented to me. Would I be mulling over the 25th Amendment, applying the fourth clause of the 25th Amendment, which has never before been employed in that way? And I answered honestly, yes, I would. If, in good conscience, if I was in the Biden cabinet, I would be wrestling with that question because I would know what we all know now, that Joe Biden is not up to the task. And it's a dangerous situation for the reasons we articulated earlier. So there's a time to every purpose under heaven. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I think the 25th Amendment is appropriate here. Now, we know, and Chip knows, we all know that the House doesn't have the authority to do that. It's the Vice President of the United States that has to initiate that process. We don't have any involvement unless there's a disagreement between the president and what the vice president and the cabinet decide. So we're far away from that eventuality. But I think the notion that the 25th Amendment would be appropriate here is something that most Republicans and, frankly, most Americans would agree with if they understood the process and how that works. And I think you'll hear a lot more talk about it. I'm under no illusion that they're going to do that. But if I were in the cabinet and Chip was in the cabinet, if any of us were in the cabinet, we would have to honestly say that that's something we'd have to wrestle with. So, yeah.
Congressman James Comer is conducting his investigation against the Biden family business. As part of that, he wants Biden's doctor to come and testify because of possibly AmeriCorps investments, things like that, and maybe compromised. Would you like to see Biden's doctor come and testify?
Yeah, I'll follow the lead of our chairman, Jamie Comer, who's doing a great job on oversight. There's so much to oversee right now. The committee is exhausted because there's so many scandals and things to look into. This is an important one, though. It's important to the American people. They want to know if this has indeed been a cover-up all the way to the top, and it looks like it has been, and what the physicians know and have known and what they've reported and all the rest. And as he's investigating the Biden family business dealings, which is certainly important to the American people, the scandalous things that we've seen and already uncovered there, I think that's an appropriate step for them to take. So if that subpoena is issued, we'll fully support it. Yes, ma'am.
Speaker Johnson, to bring these three points together, the Merrick Garland inherent contempt resolution, the 25th Amendment, as well as House oversight bringing in President Biden's doctor, I'm wondering if you have any concerns that multiple House GOP actions around President Biden and his age will actually distract from current House Democratic infighting over this issue.
Well, it is not my preference to make headlines right now. They've got a lot to deal with over there, and we would take great, you would say from a political standpoint that we would be enjoying this, but we're not. I'm not enjoying this. I think this is a dangerous thing, a dangerous time for our country. I spoke at a Hudson Institute event yesterday about national security, and we talked about the reality that China and Russia and Iran and North Korea, now Venezuela and Cuba, are all uniting in this new China-led axis. Well, the one thing all those nations have in common is they oppose the United States, and many of them get up every single day and think about how they could take us down a notch or two. It is not a good circumstance for us to have a commander-in-chief who is not on his A game, who can only work a few hours a day and can't answer questions or complete sentences. That's not a good look. And as all of our NATO partners are here on the Hill, they're seeing this with their own two eyes. They're all following it. Look, we have got to get control of the situation, and that's what the American people demand and deserve. November 5th cannot get here soon enough. And we cannot wait for Donald Trump to be reelected president. I'm absolutely convinced he will be, and we will return that strong hand to the White House, and we will get control of this situation. But right now, it's a serious matter. This is not a joking matter to us. There is accountability that's needed. That's what all these questions are alluding to. We're going to pursue it with every tool that we have. And with that, we appreciate you all being here. Thanks so much.